right? Because they're holy. Or used very rarely, but because they have a sacredness attached to them, they'll just live here with the other ones. And these are the crowns that are put above each one. And they're usually, you can take them, they're taken off. And when you read, you take all this stuff off, you take this off, and you open it up to read from it, and then you put it back. And the mics are there because there's a lot of singing that happens right around the spot here. So rabbis here, they have special VIPs down here. The rabbi gives a sermon over there, and the prayer will happen over there. But usually you're singing it still in, and singing it still out. That's our very far history. Westminster City. That's stuff. That was it. Yeah. We did the candles, we did the place, and this is particularly, we'll light that in a bit, and we'll talk about that when they light it. And yeah. It's fine, we'll just relight it. Yeah. A lot of them aren't candles usually. A lot of them these days are electric. And I've seen them turn them off sometimes. Yeah. They try to keep it on. And they're called like the eternal flame, it's a general term. But one thing they don't want to happen is you can't drop the Torah scrolls. There could be bad luck. They should drop. You'll take them out. There'll be one day in the year where you're dancing with them. And then things can get a little bit wild, dancing a little bit tricky sometimes. But people are really careful with the Torah scrolls. And if you should see a Torah scroll fall, the recommendation is that you fast for that next day. To sort of like subvert the bad luck around it.
Yeah, because it was really sorry.
Trying to do it online as well.
Right.
Look, we're there.
I'm starting. Okay. Goodbye.
Hatzlacha Rabba.
Hello, everybody. It seems a shame to stop all these wonderful conversations and interchanges that are taking place here in the sanctuary, but I want to begin our event and our ceremony this afternoon by saying, distinguished, honored guests, welcome to this 15th year of the Liberal Jewish Synagogue's multi-faith pre-Hanukkah celebration. It is one of those rare years, in the Jewish calendar at least, in which Christmas Day and the first night of Hanukkah, which lasts for 8 days, coincide, which is why we are holding this celebration a few weeks early, while schools are still open and you haven't disappeared on holiday or annual visits to family or friends. This afternoon, we are bringing together a microcosm of this great city in which we live, London. We are representatives of different faiths, races, nations, cultures, languages, and so much more. The fact that we can stand or sit together, celebrating our diversity and differences, as well as what we share, is a tribute to you all who have joined us this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. In a few moments, you will hear about Chanukkah, a little bit about its history and significance. But before then, let me just explain the overarching theme for this afternoon. Our title is taken from a collection of teachings called Avot de Rabbi Natan. Actually, they're not by Rabbi Natan, who's sitting here and is one of our speakers. It's by an antecedent. The Avot de Rabbi Natan is one of the minor tractates of the Talmud. This year has been a difficult year for so many, and particularly for those of us who cherish multi-faith gatherings, dialogue, conversations with people who are of different faiths, nationalities, ethnicities, races, cultures. We don't all want to go on marches or demonstrations, identifying only with those who are like us. We want to cultivate an environment of listening to each other, of patience, hope, inspiration for the future. Hence our theme for this year, let this sanctuary, for which read world, be a place of gathering and conversation. Here at the LJS, there is a deep longing to engage with others, whatever you believe, whatever you hope for, whatever your customs and traditions. We are curious, we want to know more about you, and we want to be able to learn about some of your traditions as we wish to share our festival of Chanukkah with you this afternoon. Last Monday, Reverend Anders Bergquist, who is here somewhere, where are you? I just saw you. It's so nice to see so many dog collars. I was just like, from St. John's Wood Church, invited me to take part in a special ceremony called Light Up a Life, a service that's conducted together with St. John's Hospice just up the road to remember loved ones who have died there. We join together representatives from our different faiths, each one contributing to a gentle remembrance accompanied by beautifully sung music. And I was reminded how important such occasions are and what it means to each one of us. Because if we don't cultivate curiosity about each other, if we don't learn about each other's customs and traditions and beliefs, if we don't talk to each other and listen to each other, then what? My hope is that this afternoon will encourage us to continue our gatherings and our conversations throughout the year into the future, and for our sanctuaries, for our world, to be that place where we gather together and engage deeply with each other. Now, my lovely colleague, Rabbi Igor, is unwell, but Scott is on the cameras, so I hope this all works somehow. The history of the festival of Hanukkah stretches back over 2,000 years to a time of complex religious, political, and social circumstances, perhaps not unlike our own era, of those who want to build bridges of dialogue and those who want to maintain a more extreme or withdrawn position in society. It is a festival which is also infused with a powerful legend about light and a spiritual message that what is important
is not might or power, but the light of God's presence among us. Hanukkah may have very ancient associations linked with the winter solstice, but its history is related in the book of Maccabees, a book that didn't make it into the canon of the Bible. Alexander the Great had conquered the Near East, including the small province of Judea. After his death, Judea came under the rule of the Seleucid dynasty. By 167 BCE, Antiochus Epiphanes was king and wanted all the people under his rule to Hellenize. He issued laws and decrees against the Jews and their practices. You cannot worship in your temple. You cannot study or read from the Torah. You must break your dietary laws. And then he did something that hurt and offended the people deeply. He set up a statue of Jupiter inside the temple, and the people were heartbroken that their temple had been defiled in such a way. They fled to the mountains and lived in caves round about Jerusalem. At that time, there was an old priest called Mattathias who had 5 sons. So enraged was he by this state of affairs that he vowed to liberate Jerusalem and reclaim the temple from its defilement. When he died, his son Judah the Maccabee took over. It took many years before the small Jewish army defeated Antiochus's armies, recaptured the temple, and rededicated it with a festival that lasted 8 days. Many centuries later, the rabbis of the Talmud retold the story of Hanukkah with a legend about a vial of oil, its seal unbroken, just enough for one day. But a miracle occurred, and the light burned for 8 days. Since that time, the Jewish people have celebrated 8 days and nights of Hanukkah, the festival of dedication, recalling the dedication of the temple. This story is told from generation to generation, each year at this season, as we light the candles on the Chanukkah and recall the miraculous survival of our people. But for all of us here, representing different faiths and cultures, different races and nationalities, its central theme of light in the midst of darkness is a universal theme. The light represents the light of creation, the light of the wintry sun we see first thing in the morning, warming the frost on the ground, or the light of a glorious sunset that concludes our day. It is the light of learning and illumination when we learn something new, the light of the warmth of friendship and companionship when we are lonely. And it is the overflowing light of hope in a future when all God's creatures will be blessed with greater love and understanding. As it is written in the prophet Zechariah, read at this season, "Not by might, not by power," says the prophet Zechariah, "but by my Spirit," says the Eternal One of hosts.
It is now my great pleasure to welcome our principal guest speaker this afternoon, Dame Karen Buck. Dame Karen was a Member of Parliament from 1997 to 2024. As MP, she had a number of roles and responsibilities, both in government and in opposition, which included Parliamentary Undersecretary in the Department of Transport, Private Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Minister in the Social Security, Work and Pensions and Education teams, Housing, Legal Aid, Access to Justice, education, human rights, health services, equality, disability, and employment. These are just a handful of the issues with which Dame Karen has engaged during her long, distinguished, and immensely hard-working career. And lest you think there is peace and rest in stepping back from being an MP, she is continuing her work in this local area, championing the cause of those who need support and creating a fairer world. Dame Karen Buck.
Thank you so much for those kind words of introduction and for inviting me yet again to join you, this time for a pre-Hanukkah celebration. And I'm delighted that I've been able over so many years to be here at this very, very important occasion. Not long before I was elected as a Member of Parliament, an academic writer called Francis Fukuyama wrote a much-fated book called The End of History, in which he posited that the era of ideological competition was over and global relations would in future be largely technical concerns about economics. This turned out to be somewhat wrong. Instead, an earlier quote has proved rather more accurate. There are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen. And we appear to be living at the moment in a period when decades happen in weeks, and the strain can be overwhelming. The strain on our international institutions, on governments, on faith communities, on local organisations, and indeed on individuals, because individuals feel this in their lives and their communities, as well as all the joys and stresses that we all carry as we go about our daily lives. And in particular, I'm only too aware, and was aware from my postbag during the months before I ended my career as a Member of Parliament in July, as Rabbi Wright has acknowledged, the great pain and anguish of this last year on the Jewish community and on the Muslim community, who have carried that strain of the crisis in the Middle East. I know how much people are hurting as a consequence of that. But sometimes it also feels, and it will get more cheerful, that the news in so many places, from Sudan, from the Congo, from Ukraine, the climate crisis, is really quite overwhelming. And I know more than a few people who have just stopped listening to the news as a consequence of it, that it just feels too bleak. And at times like this, more than ever, we need sanctuary to turn to the theme. And a place like this is a place of true sanctuary. Sanctuary, something that is holy across all religions, that is a place of peace and a place of welcome. And I am very deeply grateful for the friendship that has been extended to me over all of these years from this synagogue. Yet the fact is that some of the conversations, to move to the other part of the theme of today, the conversations that we have across divisions and between strangers sometimes feel harder now than they ever used to do. And that just stems not from the trauma of conflict, but from how we live in a changed world. Just within the last few years, social media has totally transformed the way that we interact and the nature of communication. And with the rise of artificial intelligence, that is only likely to carry on accelerating. And what started with the potential to allow us to link up with our loved ones across the globe and build new communities of like-minded people has morphed into something highly polarising and something which in so many places actually stokes division rather than uniting people. The algorithms behind social media drive us further and further away from each other. And that in turn reinforces some of the trends that have been going on in society for even longer. Another academic, Robert Putnam, found in his huge study about how we live now as a society, we tend to no longer bowl in leagues, we bowl alone. That was an American study based on the idea that when people go out for their leisure time, they used to join in teams. They used to bowl in teams and in competitive leagues. And now we choose to spend our leisure time much more alone. It's an American example. Bowling has not really ever been our thing, but it is true much more widely. Participation in the institutions of civic society has been in decline for a long time. And that sharply reduces the number of interactions that we have with individuals who are not the same as us and not in our same communities. Some of this, of course, is our own choice, the way we choose to live, and some of it is intensely freeing as well. But much of it is actually quite structured within our lives. It's in the nature of our workplaces. It's in the way we access services. It may be efficient, for example, that we close banks, that we close the local post offices, that we no longer have park keepers in our open spaces, we no longer have staff in the ticket offices at the local stations. But the consequence is that we are all poorer for a lack of those kind of interactions. And it's often precisely those interactions with a very wide range of people outside our immediate circle that are what make us feel safe in a community, that what make us able to talk to people who come from a very different kind of life to ourselves. They make us happy as interactions. They make us healthier. They reduce crime. They reduce the fear of crime. And the absence of trust, which often flows from that lack of casual connection, is damaging to our health, damaging to our well-being, damaging to our national wealth. The epidemic of loneliness that we confront as society may be to do with changing families and busier lives, but is also demonstrably rooted in the absence of familiar and more casual interactions. For we are wired to be social beings. We are built not to bowl alone. And the good news, and there is good news, is that the foundations of civic society, although they have been eroded in so many ways, are around. They are still there. They are here in this synagogue. They are here in our faith communities and the work that they do reaching out. And I particularly acknowledge the magnificent work that has been done here over so many years, working with refugee communities, for example, and the generosity of spirit that is behind that. They are here, and I know not all of you are from St John's Wood, in the St John's Wood Society, just a grouping of like-minded people who come together to champion their local neighbourhood and make representations to defend it and keep it a quality place to be. They are here in the volunteers who go into the Citizens Advice Bureau and provide advice and help for people who are in need. They are the people in the food bank. They are the trustees of the Avenues Youth Club. They are mentors in our schools. They are appropriate adults at police stations and lay visitors. They are councillors and canvassers of all political parties, because I believe that kind of participation is vital to a healthy democracy, and without it, they are all the poorer. They are actions and they are donations which rarely feel heroic in themselves, but actually are. So let us never give up on the interfaith discussions that take place in a higher level. They are fine things and people work very hard at them. But let us just as importantly, each of us renew our commitment to those small interactions, those individual conversations, and the little actions which are the glue of society. In the words of William Wordsworth, they are the little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. For there are no small acts of kindness. Every compassionate act makes large the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your friendship to our community. And thank you for your words, which have made us think so much and can frame our whole response, I think, to the world in which we live in a much more positive way. I'm so grateful to you. We love to hear different voices up here, so we now have some short presentations from 6 speakers. I'm going to introduce them all to you. and their names are all up there. They're going to speak in that order. I'm going to invite them in a few moments to come up one at a time. The Reverend Claire Dowding is a mother, priest, and community activist. Claire has served as rector of St. Paul's Marylebone, based on the Lisson Green and Church Street estates since 2014, and holds additional responsibilities as Area Dean of Marylebone and priest in charge of St. Cyprian's, Clarence Gate. Avani Jariwala, a volunteer at the Srimad Rajchandra Mission, Dharampur, London Spiritual Centre, UK charity organisation, is based in Bushey, northwest London, and that centre is in 206 centres globally. Hassan Mohammad is a director of the Muslim Institute and senior editor of its journal, Critical Muslim. He is also an author, playwright, and theatre director. Dr. Rahina Harilal is an engaged Buddhist in the Plum Village tradition, having received lay ordination into the Order of Interbeing from Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh in 2016. She is the founder of Buddhists Across Traditions, an initiative dedicated to uniting diverse Buddhist traditions in the pursuit of racial, social, and climate justice. Disha Chadha is a member of the National Executive Committee of the Hindu Forum of Britain. She is currently a serving co-chair of both the Faiths Forum for London and the Faith and Belief Sector panel of the London Resilience Board. In 2020, she was honoured with an OBE for services to faith communities. And Rabbi Natan Levy is the head of operations for Faiths Forum for London. Natan is the co-author of Sharing Eden, Green Teachings from Jews, Christians and Muslims, and pursuing a doctorate in environmental theology at Bristol University. He teaches rabbinic literature and guided text study in Midrashic topics at Leo Beck College. I'd love to do that with you. So, Reverend Claire Dowding.
Thank you, Rabbi Alexandra, for the kind invitation to join you for this annual multi-faith celebration of Hanukkah and to offer a few words of reflection. As a family, we have looked forward to this special occasion each year since my children were small. I think it's the 10th year we've attended. My youngest daughter was invited to light one of the Hanukkah candles when she was just 5 years old and memorably accidentally blew out the attendant candle, which was, of course, she was very kindly assured by Rabbi Alexandra afterwards that all was okay. But this precious annual gathering, this conversation and the friendships that surround it, this sanctuary of light and hope, this courageous act of gathering faith communities has formed a special part in our family life and in the life of our church community. One moment that stays with me from during the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown was the online gathering for this service. We gathered on our Zoom screens, each in a sanctuary and the safety of our own homes, each of us longing for light, perseverance, and hope. And we found it in this sanctuary of gathering and conversation. In all the pain and hurt and division that we see in our world at the moment, in such a time as this, the desire for sanctuary to be a place of gathering and conversation is courageous and life-affirming, and it is a revolutionary act. It is a cry, a prayer of hope, that this sanctuary may be a place of gathering and conversation in a world that is so often experienced as divisive, isolated, and quarrelsome. As a Christian, we share the desire to seek these holy places and spaces of gathering and conversation. We seek the holy, the sanctuary, in the firm, grounded places of our world as much as in our religious buildings and communities. The Christian priest and writer Barbara Brown Taylor speaks of this desire to seek an altar in the world, doing what we can as friends, as faith communities, to create spaces of beauty, worship, refuge and rest, safety and sanctuary, to discover, as she writes, that a life can be as full of meaning as it is of hurt. This is what we do as we gather today. This is what we do when we gather as faith communities, when we gather as faith leaders locally, seeking beauty, refuge, rest and safety, gathering and conversation. To quote the writer Rebecca Solnit, we do so to remember what we love, to remember what loves us, and to remember what love looks like in the face of hate. Rabbi Alexandra, thank you for your courage and the hope you show us all. Thank you for reminding us what we love and what loves us, and most importantly, what love looks like in the face of hate. All of us will face hatred and prejudice in our lives, but especially as we gather in this synagogue, in this sanctuary, we think of those who face anti-Semitism and prejudice every day on the street or at work or in places of worship, and we stand in solidarity and prayer. May this sanctuary, this holy place, this holy desire be a place of gathering and conversation. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, Rabbi Alex, for the warm invite. So today we gather to reflect on a profound vision, a vision where our world, our sanctuary, becomes a place of gathering and conversation, a place where hearts meet, minds meld, and spirits soar through the essence of true connection. In the teachings of Jainism, we find guiding principles that can help us transform this vision into reality. Ahimsa, or non-violence, teaches us to interact with others with compassion and understanding. It reminds us that our words and actions hold power, a power that can either build bridges or erect barriers. Let us choose to build bridges. Srimad Rajchandraji, a revered Jain philosopher, once said, "The soul's nature is the same as that of supreme knowledge. It is found where there is true understanding." In these words, we find a call to action, a call to create spaces where understanding is paramount, where conversations are not just exchanges of words, but journeys towards deeper truths and shared enlightenment. Imagine a world where every conversation is infused with the spirit of Anekantvad, the Jain principle of multiple perspectives. Here, we embrace the notion that truth is multifaceted and every viewpoint adds a unique thread to the tapestry of our collective wisdom. By listening to and opening our hearts and open minds, we honor the diversity of experiences and insights that every single one of us brings. In this sanctuary, let us gather and let our gatherings be marked by the virtues of satya, truthfulness, asteya, non-stealing, and brahmacharya, chastity, and aparigra, non-possessiveness. These virtues guide us to speak with integrity, respect one another, approach discussions with the purity of intent, and release our attachments to preconceived notions. As we come together in this sacred space, let us remember the true gathering transcends physical proximity, and it's about connecting soul to soul, recognizing that divine spark within each of us. It's about creating an atmosphere of where dialogue flourishes, empathy grows, and understanding deepens. May we cultivate a sanctuary where every conversation becomes a step towards peace and harmony, and more than anything, unity. A world where we celebrate our differences and find a common ground. Through mindful conversation and compassionate connection, may we create a ripple effect of love and understanding that extends beyond our immediate circles. Om. Peace, peace, peace.
Greetings. I bring greetings to you all from the trustees and members of the Muslim Institute. You may not have heard of us, so please indulge me just for a minute just to talk about ourselves. We're an egalitarian fellowship society from all walks of life, and our mission is to encourage and support the growth of critical thinking, knowledge, research, creativity, and open debate within Muslim communities and with wider society. And in the latter point, the question of dialogue and communication and conversation, we're very serious about trying to make these conversations possible, which is why I'm honoured to be here speaking to you all at the invitation of Rabbi Wright. In one sense, it's an exchange because the Institute was honoured to have Senior Rabbi Wright come to speak at our annual weekend gathering that we hold every year at Sarum College in Salisbury. And the theme of the weekend this year was Against Genocide, is a New Palestine-Israel possible? And Rabbi Wright spoke to the question, British Muslims and British Jews, can we come together to combat Islamophobia and anti-Semitism? And I genuinely say that the rabbi spoke with humility and sincerity and with thoughtfulness and with intellectual rigour on that question. And we were very grateful to have the rabbi in conversation with us over this really urgent question. And it's not the place here to elaborate, but I would say that we do need urgently to build some new structures by which we can have these conversations. Maybe the old structures don't fit anymore because the world has changed and not in ways which any of us like. And we must, crucially, I believe, bring in young people of all backgrounds and all faiths to tackle the questions which, in one sense, we as older generations have somehow failed. My final point, the light. Light, I guess, is a feature of many, if not all, religions, a symbolic element, if you like. And in the Quran, we have a chapter, a surah, just called Light. It's a very complex, esoteric chapter, and I'm not a religious figure, so I'm not going to try and interpret it for you. But just to say that it mentions light as a way of illuminating things. Of course, that is absolutely true. But in the surah, interestingly enough, it also talks about light being a parable. In other words, a simple tale, if you like, which gives spiritual or moral guidance and somehow shows us the way forward. And that's been something that has been on my mind recently, this notion of trying to illuminate a way forward, of light perhaps being a parable, not just something it illuminates, which actually tries to show us a path forward and maybe some common destination. I know that Islamophobia and anti-Semitism is rising here in the UK and across the world. And as an old anti-fascist organiser, which one of my roles in my past, I recognise it all too keenly. And we have to unite to do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi, for inviting me, and I apologize in advance. I've come armed with my water, my mask. I have a bit of a cold, which you can hear. I've also come as a bridger between two types of communication, armed with both my paper copy and electronic device, in case one fails. So I'm really grateful to be here today to share a few words. I will stop every now and again when I break into cough. Please bear with me. In Buddhism, we take refuge in the three jewels. The Buddha, the awakened one who shows us the path. The Dharma is the teachings that show us the way. And the Sangha, the community, the sanctuary that supports our spiritual journey. The Buddha teaches in the Sangha Sutra that spiritual friendship is the essence of holy life. He said in his teachings to his disciple Ananda, spiritual friendship, Kalyana Mitra, is the whole of the holy life. When a person has admirable friends, companions, and fellow practitioners, they support each other in cultivating wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. It is through such companionship that one can reach the highest wisdom of liberation. This teaching shows us that community is not just a support system, but the heart of our spiritual journey. By walking together in wisdom, compassion, and ethical conduct, we create sanctuaries. When we walk as individuals or as communities, to grow our energy, to effect collective change in the world around us. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us, deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. If we listen with our heart, with non-judgment, this compassionate listening can ease the suffering, transforming pain into understanding and suffering into peace. When we listen deeply, when we hear the other, we create a space for healing. So we can look at who we consider the other and see the reflection of ourselves. The Dalai Lama echoes, "My religion is kindness." This kindness is not passive. It is an active, transformative, and courageous way of being. In times of conflict and misunderstanding, we must see one another not with judgment, but with understanding and compassion. In our practice in Buddhism, we recognize that every conflict begins with a fundamental misunderstanding. Whether we witness war, environmental destruction, or social injustice, our response should not be to condemn, to respond with violence and anger, but to offer compassionate understanding, healing, in a way that we can cultivate the energy of hope for peace. We are called always to see the interconnection that binds all beings and to protect life by acknowledging our shared existence. Thich Nhat Hanh shared that there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Peace is something we embody every day, in every conversation, in every act of listening, and in every act of kindness. This spirit of peace mirrors the light of Hanukkah, where the miracle was not just the oil that burned for 8 days, but the enduring hope it symbolized, the ability to light and kindle light in darkness. Like the menorah, our community is always a sanctuary of light, where we come together to bring compassion, understanding, and justice in a divided world. I'll close with a prayer from the Buddhist master Shantideva, who invoked this for us all as community of spiritual beings. May we be a guard for those who are protectorless, a guide for those who journey on the road, for those who wish to cross the water. May we be a boat, a raft, a bridge, for all those ailing in the world until their sickness has been healed. May we become for them the doctor, the nurse, the healing medicine. In this moment, in this community, we embody the compassionate path. Like the Maccabees who rekindled the eternal light, we too are called to be bearers of hope. Our refuge is not only in spiritual practice of coming together, but to see and to serve one another with kindness and to create a sanctuary for all beings. Let us together cultivate spaces of compassionate conversation where all can find refuge, connection, and transformation. Through our deep listening and kindness, we can heal suffering and nurture peace for ourselves and the world around us, so that we can leave a better legacy for those that come after us. Thank you. And I did that without a single cough. Well done to us.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for the very warm invitation. I've actually been here a few times, but this is the first time I've actually been invited to speak, so I'm very excited about doing this today. The theme of gathering and sanctuary and dialogue has actually never felt more important than it does today. Because of my own kind of like seva that I do in my community or selfless service, as we refer to it, I have spent many hours in conversation with people of all faiths and people of none. Not only is conversation the first step, but I've actually found it to be the most fundamental. Conversations have taught me about awareness, respecting differences, being tolerant, and being kind. Our most sacred text in Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita, or as we refer to it, the Divine Song, is actually based on a conversation. So it's 18 verses, it's about this thick, and it's actually one conversation that Lord Krishna has with Arjuna, who is his very dear friend. And Arjuna, they're fighting on a battlefield, and he sees his kith and kin in front of him and decides that he can no longer fight this battle and lays down his weapons. And through this conversation, Lord Krishna actually reveals to Arjuna his true self, his spiritual self. And there is this back and forth. And sometimes the conversation is quite gentle, sometimes it's a lot more robust. But through that, there is a spiritual awakening within Arjuna about who he actually is. And through the conversation, this is achieved. So imagine what we can aspire to when we stop to consider, to speak, to really listen to one another. A few years ago, I was actually invited to attend March of the Living. I know that at times the conversations that I had with Jewish friends were very difficult for both myself and for them. I asked a lot of questions, so there was a lot of kind of like to and fro coming back. But through that conversation, I finally understood something of the shared and painful history of the Jewish people. We actually visited Majdanek Museum, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, and there was something that was very powerful and very strong about what I saw there, that it kind of actually provoked some kind of emotion within me. I wrote a very strong letter to the Polish government about the memorial because of the conversations I was having with my friends, with the understanding that I finally had about what it is to step into someone else's space, to step into their world, to really kind of like empathize and sympathize. I even actually got a response from the Polish government, which was quite something. But dialogue asks this of us. Conversation asks this of us. It asks us to step boldly into someone else's world, to really try to understand them. Or as for the case of Urgina, it asks us to better understand ourselves. Dialogue within our faith and with people of other faiths enables us to do both. It's a place for me of power and of privilege. It can and should be a force for good. And I hope that we collectively use it as such. So thank you for opening your synagogue to us and for using this space as a place for conversation and very much as a force for good.
You guys are doing great. I'm the last one, so you're almost there. There's a story told about an old Jewish fellow, and he's sitting in a drabby little hospital somewhere in the Bronx. And his children call him up and say, "Papa, Abba, what are you doing in that drabby little hospital? We put you up at one of the fine Manhattan hospitals. Was it the food? Was the food a problem in that fine Manhattan hospital?" And the old man says, No, the food was wonderful, kosher and warm, it was delicious, I can't complain. And he said, "Well, Papa, was it the nurses, was it the doctors, was it the staff at that fancy hospital down in Manhattan?" And the old man says, "No, the staff was excellent. You know, the nurses, they came around, they spoke, they were kind, the doctors were top rate, I couldn't complain." And so the children ask him and say, "Papa, what are you doing in this old drab place in the Bronx?" He says, "Here in this hospital, here I can complain." When I think a lot about conversation, especially in Judaism, I think about complaining. The rabbis love to complain. They call it, there's a Yiddish word for it, it's hard to translate, kvetching. Kvetch. And when it comes to Hanukkah, the rabbis have a real kvetch. And they ask this question. You know, it's one of the key elements of Hanukkah is that you light these candles, which we're about to do, and it's called Persume Nes, publicizing the miracle that Rabbi Alex said so eloquently about, where they had just a little bit of oil for one day, and it lasts miraculously for 8 days. All right, beautiful. If only my energy bill could be like that. And so the rabbis ask this question. Okay, they say, I get it, it's a miracle day 2 through day 8. But day 1's not such a miracle, right? Day 1, they had a little bit of oil, they lit the oil, it stayed lit for that day. Where's the miracle? You hear the question? That's the question. Where's the miracle in day 1? And they give this answer. They say, the miracle is that it was a dark time. And there had been this horrible civil war. And they come into this temple, and there's just enough oil, and it needs to stay lit. And people probably all around said, leave it for dark for now. We don't have the oil. It's not going to be ready for 8 more days. Leave things dark. And some plucky little priest got up there and said, no, I know we don't have enough oil. I know we're not going to make it. I'm just going to light for this one day. And that's the miracle of the first day. The miracle to stand up. The miracle to light, even when there's not enough oil. That's the miracle of day 1. That's why we light for 8 days. If we had lots of time, I would say we're living in dark times around interfaith. I've never seen it so challenging. But there are so many stories that we could tell. So many stories in this room of those who are lighting despite all the darkness, despite the fact there's not quite enough oil. I'm going to give you one really quick one. The Birmingham Progressive Synagogue, I got a call from them. Ramadan is coming, they said last year. And we want to have an iftar in our synagogue, but people tell us we can't do iftar. Security risks. Should we do it? And being a little naive, I'm like, yeah. And they say, okay. The next day I had a call from a fellow they've invited, a lovely man called Cameron, director of the Bahu Trust. And he says, Natan, they've invited me, but I've been told by the community, don't do this now. This isn't the right time to do this. Things are dark within our communities, and we can't have good relationships. Should I go and speak? Should I give a prayer? And naively I say, yes. And he goes and he gives this beautiful prayer. I wish I could share with you later. Transforms the community. They put it into their newsletter. They share it. It transforms them. And then in the summer, against those horrible riots, the Birmingham Progressive community in mass got up and on Friday night brought their challah, brought their Shabbos bread to Jumu'ah prayers to share with the Bahu Trust and that mosque. Because they're willing to light a little bit. A small bit grows. A small miracle grows. And that's potential here, in this darkness. That's potential here tonight. Imagine us if we each just lit a bit of light, changed things just a touch, kvetched, complained, argued, and fought against the darkness to start a small miracle. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for contributing from your own traditions, from your own belief systems to this evening's theme. So it's now my pleasure to introduce you to my colleague, student Rabbi Andrea Kulikowski, who in fact has come all the way from Brazil, not today, I hasten to add, and is going to lead us in the lighting of the candles. Let's see what comes up next. And I would like to invite our candle lighters, I think we just have enough, to join us here on the bima, to come up to the upper bima. Lord Mayor, Councillor Robert Rigby, Father Robert Kozak from St. Paul's Cathedral, Nikki Goldman from the Jewish Volunteers Network, Joanna and Dan, who are with Rabbi Natan, Imam Fatih Labidi, Kaban Mohammadi from Westminster City Council, and Raj and Mahesh. Please do come up, and I invite student Rabbi Andrea to lead us. Please come up.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim la'avoteinu bayamim ha'em bazman hazeh. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe. You sanctify us by your commandments and enjoin us to kindle the Hanukkah lights. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe. You performed wonders for our ancestors in days of old at this season.
Stay up here for a photo. Very important. Who's next? Yeah.
conversation.
Hanerat Hallelu. We kindle these lights in remembrance of the wonderful deliverance you performed for our ancestors. During all the 8 days of Hanukkah, these lights are sacred. We are enjoined not to use them, but only to gaze upon them, so that their glow may move us to give thanks for your wonderful acts of deliverance.
Now, as many of you know, we partake of very special foods at this season, donuts and latkes, potato pancakes, and platters of fruit as well, and other sweet things. But you are going to have to sing for your supper this evening. There's no Rabbi Igor with his guitar, so we're going to invite you to join with this song. You might have heard the accompaniment of the music at the beginning, and the words will come up on the screen.
Light one candle for the Magdalene children, give thanks that their light didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured, when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. Light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through all our tears. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through all our tears. Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering the pain we learned so long ago. Light one candle for all we believe in, let anger not tear us apart. Light one candle to bind us together with peace as the song in our heart. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through all our tears. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through all our tears.
I can smell the latkes, so that must mean it's time to enjoy some food. I want to say a huge thank you to all our speakers, Dame Karen Bach, Reverend Claire Dowding, Avani Jarawala, Hassan Mahamdali, Rahina Harilal, Dr. Disha Shadha, and Rabbi Natan Levy. Thank you so much for contributing. Thank you to our student rabbi, Andrea, wherever you've gone. And thank you to all our volunteers and staff here at the LJS who made today happen. Thank you to you all for attending. If this is your first time at the synagogue, please do stay in the sanctuary. Carolyn Simon will be giving you a tour of the sanctuary, showing you the scrolls. You're most welcome to come forward, and she'll be talking to you, and then join the rest of us for tea afterwards. I just finally want to say that this event this afternoon is dedicated to the memory of Bob Kirk. I think I put his name up here, did I? Sorry, let's just see. Who used to do the tour of the sanctuary and give a little talk at the end here. He died on December the 3rd, just last week. Some of you will remember him. His funeral took place earlier today, and I want to dedicate this ceremony to him with my thanks to all of you for being here today. Thank you so much. Please enjoy the food.